my dad at the time, and that was here in San Antonio, my dad at the time was trafficking methamphetamine from San Antonio to Cleveland. The further that you take meth up north, the more that it's going to be worth. And so he was making a killing. Unbeknownst to my mom, he was already married with two children.
Quentin, how are you, brother?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me, Travis. It means a lot, bro.
Oh man, I'm happy to be here with you. Happy to be here with you. Does everybody call you Quentin? I got a close buddy in St. Louis. We call him Q.
That's pretty much what I get called. Yeah, Q is a big thing. I've been called Q, Quinn, Big Q,
Less
kind of
big Q after your
little,
transformation.
little bit of everything, man. Yeah, I mean, I love the gym. I work out in the gym. Most of the guys in the gym call me Big Q, but it's just a thing. There are other big guys named Quentin around. I know that, but I just like, now Quentin's what I've always gone by. Q's what I've always gone by. So either or, bro.
I love it, man. Good, good, good. I'm glad to be talking with you today. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, yeah. So reason I was born in Cleveland back then, when this was like the late 80s, early 90s, I am the middle child of my family, so to speak. My mom was a single woman of four kids, me including the four, because she had three before me. And my mom dropped out of school when she was about 13 years old, got pregnant right after that, and then had three kids back to back before she was even old enough to drink. I came into the picture when my mom was 21. My father met my mom at a park, and my dad at the time, and that was here in San Antonio, my dad at the time was trafficking methamphetamine from San Antonio to Cleveland. The further that you take meth up north, the more that it's going to be worth. And so he was making a killing. Unbeknownst to my mom, he was already married with two children, and he had cheated on that wife with another woman who he had also got pregnant. So I have a brother that I've never met, a brother that I just met last year at my father's funeral, and then a sister that's up there as well. And I have a brother here because he cheated on my mom. And I have three older siblings, a younger sister, and a little brother. We all pretty much have different dads. The first three have their own father. I have my own dad. I'm the only one from my father, and then the two after are from my current stepdad. But that's the only reason that I was born in Cleveland. My dad ended up getting caught up there while he was in the middle of trafficking some stuff, and basically he wrote my mom letters from prison, told her, hey, come here, you can have everything that you need. We'll make sure that you got money. He would send my mom money all the time. So she was already pregnant with me in her stomach. She drove a Greyhound with my older brothers and sisters all the way to Cleveland, Ohio. We ended up staying with his ex-wife. And that was why I was born in Cleveland, which is random. But I spent the majority of my childhood in Cleveland. I came down here permanently when I was about 11, 12 years old. And I grew up on the west side of San Antonio.
Wow, that had to be the first 11 or 12 years. That was a wild time, man.
Yeah, I was in and out of foster homes. My parents were very unstable, and I
Okay.
grew up watching my dad beat the crap out of my mom. I was introduced to child abuse at a very, very young age, and I also had no idea that these giant mountain piles of white powder was cocaine. And my dad was a hardcore drug dealer at the time, and he was also like very connected with, um, different types of gangs and whatnot, and basically was involved criminally. And so, I that was kind of like my first role model, as crazy as it was. You know what I mean? Like, because I got a chance to see my dad do those things. I don't have a lot of great memories of my father other than him tossing my mom around and beating the crap out of us. And, when we finally broke away from my dad, my mom would finally decide to leave. Uh, I remember it was WrestleMania 18. Like, if you look up the date of when that event happened, I remember it was on a pay-per-view. I was chilling in my dad's room watching it on a ghetto rig paper box. They were like pay-per-view boxes. They were like brown, right? And I remember I was watching the Kurt Angle versus the Rock fight because they were trying to see who would rematch Stone Cold for the heavyweight championship of the world. It was a big deal. I had been watching it all the way up to that. My mom came in. She was like, "We're taking off again." I said, "Again, mom? Like, is it serious? Is it serious this time?" Because my mom would try to leave my father over and over and over again just to go back to him. And my dad would always promise that he would change. My dad had a very big addictive personality, man. So, he was addicted to my mom. He was addicted to drugs too. So he went all in the worst ways. And, I think that I have a little bit of that in my father, in me, because I have an addictive personality as well. Man, I pick up on things so quick. It was easy for me to get into real estate, and even all the things before that, because I also sold weed back then too. I picked that up and I didn't just do that. I was really good at it. It was at a point where I was trafficking between 20 to 40 pounds from Long Beach, California to San Antonio, Texas in the back of my truck. And I'd make that drive going through Oklahoma, coming in through North Texas and driving it down to avoid the borders. So those were where I was from at that time frame. But when I look at what my father had been for me, he wasn't the best role model in the world, but I do carry the same addictive personalities. And I think most people that I meet that are entrepreneurs, business owners, they have that. They have addictive personalities. They just, I'm telling you, if I would have been a meth addict, bro, I would have been the best meth addict in the world. As it just so happened that the good Lord blessed me with real estate. And it was in the middle of my life where I was facing some time, prison, but I also learned and I graduated from that. When I got out after the DEA had raided my house, it's so funny how, birds of a feather flock together. Apple don't fall too far from the tree, right? My dad taught me so much. When I met my stepdad, I was 13, 14 years old. He taught me how to sell weed, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. When my mom finally made the decision to leave my father, it was hell for a long time. As my dad was trying to kill my mom and chase after us and find us wherever hotels we were staying at. So we went from being in hell in Cleveland to being in hell in San Antonio. I finally broke free from that when I was around 15 years old. I told my father I never wanted to talk to him again. God rest his soul, and I pray that the Lord, and I've also forgiven him, but I pray that the Lord's forgiven him for the things that he's done. But he passed away around this time a year ago, and he was homeless. He was literally in the forest, and he died. And some homeless guy found his body, and lo and behold, last time I would ever see him, he'd be laying in a casket. This was a year ago. It's really been crazy transition. Like I know I'm hopping into this podcast. You have
Yeah,
no idea really about any of the stuff that I've gone through. So kind of just dumping it all on you.
love it,
But
bro.
going from the marijuana business to the real estate business, that was a big transition in my life. And I truthfully thank God for just bringing that to me and really showing me something because for the longest time, it had been kind of engraved into me, thinking that I would always be living in the shadow of what my father was and what I am going to be today. And I broke that cycle when I decided to get into real estate. A friend of mine told me about wholesaling, and that's kind of when my whole life changed.
Golly, man, so interesting. You want to talk about parallels? So, I grew up in Boston, and my dad was organized crime figure, and similar to kind of what you said, like I just grew up doing it with him, and I wouldn't say doing it. I wasn't trafficking. I wasn't, I don't want to make it sound cooler or bigger than it is, but when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and I was in the front seat, and this was the time of payphones and pagers and red duffel bags and all of the things. Now that I look back, obviously 30 years later, it's easy to piece it together.
Right.
But like same story, man. I tell jokes. You probably got a handful of these as well. Like just driving around with my dad, where he would give me what he thought was like fatherly wisdom. And I'll give you an example. Like one's funny, one's real life. But he would always say, "Hey Q, you see that girl there? Hey Trav, you see that girl there?" I'd say, "Yeah," and he'd say, "Man, if she had a different face and a better body, she could be attractive."
Hmm.
So he was had all these kind of like fatherly things that he would kick off, and he would give you this advice that was so out there, so random, so out in the ether, but he really didn't have any place to give advice from. He was really just a drug dealer and a criminal. And so it's interesting that you had that kind of same similar path growing up. Like, this is just what I grew up as. People probably look at you like they look at me, like, how did you survive that? Or, oh my goodness, same story. Father was very abusive physically to my mother, verbally to us. And as soon as I was able to get in between the two of it, that's when, I knew that I had to step in, physically and metaphorically. And people would give you the same responses, like, how do you live with that? Well, I just didn't know any different. It was just what it was. It was probably much similar to your upbringing.
Yeah. Man, I've learned to have grace toward my childhood. And I've gone through the therapy. I
Yep.
mean, if I were to really recommend anything to anybody that's here, if you've been struggling with maybe trauma that you've held on to, a big part of the transition that I've had in my life that has really saved me was giving my life to Jesus Christ. That was the biggest step in my life. And this is coming from somebody who has Satan tattooed on his back. Like when I tell you guys I fell from God very heavy, I mean, I would just always curse him and I would say things like, why would you run me through these things? If you actually love me, why would you give me all of these different types of trials and tribulations? And it reminds me of it's one of my favorite books. It's a book inside of the Bible. It's called the Book of Job. And what I love about this is it's a story of a gentleman who was very blessed. He had it all. He was a very wealthy man of his time. He had all of the land, all of the cattle. He had beautiful children, very healthy and amazing wife, super supportive. And the story begins is that Satan would approach God and he would say, "What do you believe your faith is in this individual named Job?" And God says, "Well, what about my servant Job? What do you mean?" He says, "Well, he only follows you because you've blessed him so much." He says, "I guarantee you that if you allow me to go down there and do my worst, he will curse you." And so God says, "You can do everything that you want to him except take his life." And so Job would end up going through one of the hardest trials and tribulations over a 40 to 50 year period of time where his family would die, his wife would leave him, his lands would rot, his cattle would fall over and croak. And it's in this moment where, toward the end, after staying faithful, almost every single person that would come up to Job would be like, "Man, you gotta say something to your God. I don't know who that guy is, but he's not here with you." When in reality, God was with him the entire time. And Job stayed faithful, right? Until he had his breaking moment where he dropped to his knees with boils across his body. Satan did his worst and he cursed the heavens and the sky, said, "Why would you do this to me?" And God would come down and speak to Job, and he says, "Who are you to question me? Am I not the one who has created everything?" And so the story ends with Job being blessed tenfold. He brings his family back, his cattle, his land, and he gets 10x of everything that he had ever wanted because God saw that he had stayed faithful in some of the worst times. And the passage in the Bible, it says this, it says, "God giveth, God taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." You see, we can curse God for bringing us through hardships, and we can say, "Why?" Or we can thank him for the trials and tribulations and for allowing us the opportunity to build a real relationship with him and to get closer to him. That right there was one of the biggest transitions in my life to letting go of any past trauma that I've ever had, and even trauma that I would experience as an adult getting in real estate. I mean, I'm not trying to come on this podcast and make it seem like I've made all of this money in my life. I've done very well for myself. Travis, I've done over $30 million in revenue in almost like a 5 year period of time. But what you're not, what most people don't do when they come out on podcasts, they don't tell you that when I made that amount of money, Travis, let me tell you what, it turned me into the ugliest human being you could think of. I ended up losing all of it, ended up losing my wife of 10 years. My son did not like the man that I was, and I have to look at the child that I raised and him not want to speak to me because of the type of man that money made me become. You see, money, if given to the right person, can do a lot of great things. If given to the wrong person who's not ready for it, well, God's going to humble you. And that's the reality of it. And so, what I've realized is that money is an amplifier. I ended up filing for bankruptcy, lost $17 million. I had to pay back all of this debt. I had just bought a warehouse. I had just bought two 18-wheeler trucks. I had a tractor. I had a forklift. I had all kinds of things. And I had employees that depended on me where I felt that I let them down, which would almost lead me to suicide.
Mm.
So like business can be very much black and white, a lot of times more black than it can be white, but it depends on the person. I know that God can give, but God can take away. And in this trial and tribulation that I'm speaking of, I can either curse God and say, "Why would this happen to me?" Or I can thank him for the opportunity because now I know what not to do the next time I am ever blessed or God chooses to allow me to receive that type of favor. And I think that there's growth in that.
Big time growth in that, brother. That's beautiful. Did you grow up with this religious background?
No, not at all,
I
man.
didn't think so. I didn't want to set you
No.
up, especially with the tattoo, but obviously with, color in the lines a little bit for us, because obviously, your father's into some hard drugs. Stepfather, in the early teenage years, still introduces you to drugs. Like, what's the transition period? People call it rock bottom, but I call my savior our rock. So I'm not really sure that it's a rock bottom if you use it the wrong way. So what was your turning point? What was that relationship? When did you feel like you were Job?
Well, to be honest, I feel like that would happen to me multitude times in my life, man.
Yeah.
Even as I began to progress in real estate, I'm not coming on here in this podcast to say that I'm the holiest of holies. I
No,
sin every day. And that's why I need Jesus, man, is because that's the most consistent thing in my life. But I've never been a follower of Christ. And if I ever spoke about God on any previous podcast, I'll openly apologize to every single person who's ever listened to me because I really only told you about God because I thought that that's what would get you to trust me to buy my products from me. That's the reality of it. If I ever spoke about Jesus, it was for pure vanity because I thought that that's what people would get out of me to like me more. And
Mhm.
thus meaning that they would buy something from me. Now I don't care, bro. Like if no one gets anything from this podcast, man, like I'll still love them the same. I'll tell you what, I'm not holding on to anything anymore. And this image that I have now is just so much different, bro. But it was a transition in my life multiple times that would happen where I think that in life, the older that you get, the more things that you leave behind,
Yeah.
right? But there's also different types of transformation where you're going to be reborn multitudes of times. Where if you want to reach a specific blessing, it starts with killing away an old version of yourself that no longer serves you. And I just felt like in my life, when I wanted to do this real estate thing, I was faced with a lot of adversity. My mom didn't believe in me. She said, Mijo, you should just keep trying to sell weed. That's what you're good at. That's what you can do. You're great at it, my son. We love you. And so far, so good, right? And when I showed my big sister, she said, that sounded like a scam. And I showed my brother, he said, you do it and then I'll do it. My brother would end up working for me almost 3 years later from that point in time. But that's nor here or there. What I'm saying is that in the beginning, you're going to go a very long while without any type of support, without any type of recognition, without any type of praise from people that are very close to you that you love. Now, you can do two things. You can allow that to define you, and you say, all right, what they're saying is right. It's true about me. I'm not worthy of this business. Or you can say, I'm going to use this as fuel and we're going to do a production pivot where I'm going to take the negativity and use it to fuel positive action in the direction that I want to go. And so, man, it was about like a year and a half later, I ended up closing my first real estate deal. And this was like in 2015, man. I was about to be a dad. And I was scared, because I wasn't ready. I don't think anybody was ready to be a father. I got a little baby girl on the way now. So I got kid number two. I'm excited. I've never been more ready, never been more prepared mentally, spiritually, physically, financially. I'm excited to meet my first daughter. But back then, this version of Q was very afraid of commitment to a child, a new life other than my own that I'm going to be responsible for. And so I was at a rush to get it done. I made 2,100 bucks, and that was my first breakthrough deal. My second deal, I'd make 5 grand. My third one, I made 10 grand. And then my fourth one, I made a little over $500,000. And that would be the one that would change my life. That one got me on the news, got me on podcasts, got me speaking on stages, got me starting my own events, got me building my own communities. I own 3 large Facebook groups on wholesaling real estate. I have one called Wholesaling Real Estate Elite Freedom. We have almost 100,000 members in there. My own, which is called Cheat Codes, 26,000 members. I've reached almost over 500,000,000 people within the last 5 years of me promoting myself and my brand and my content and putting myself out there. And so, I say all of this is that even through the time frames of which I'm standing on these stages, there's still a broken version of Q consistently healing himself from the version of himself that he used to be that has carried trauma into what he does now. And so like I think a year ago, truthfully giving my life to Jesus was when I relinquished myself of that pain or that want or that need to prove myself. Because at the beginning, I think I really just got to where I wanted to get by just solely trying to prove myself. I stopped looking for the external validation on where it was that I was going. And I started looking at the eternal validation of what God wanted me to do, and thus internally saving me. And so from the external, I can bless so that I can help others find the eternal so they can understand the internal. Because if you want to build a business, y'all, anybody who's listening to this right now, it's not about building upward. You got to dig deeper. That's the reality. Because your business is either going to be built on sand or it's going to be built on rock. So, what are your kingdom like principles and how are you applying that to building your actual business? Most people don't have that. And that's why their companies are in turmoil. It's because they don't realize the damage that they're doing by not fixing themselves internally. Once you fix this here, God's going to bless you 10x. You know, and it reminds me of the story of the feeding of the 5,000, where Jesus Christ would take 5 barley loaves and 2 fish from some kid who gave it to him with childlike faith. He didn't even know that 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish was enough to feed 5,000 people. He's just a kid. When you and I were kids, Travis, and we saw Power Rangers on the TV, boy, I wanted to be the Green Ranger all day. You couldn't tell me that that's not who I could be. If I wanted to grow up and say I wanted to be a ninja, it's that childlike faith that we had when we were kids that helped us stride toward greatness in our lives. It's hopping on the monkey bars for the first time, not realizing that with just a little bit of time and consistency that we can get to the other side. We've all been there at one point where we saw other people do great things, and so we fell in line to try to do the same thing, to reach and match that level of greatness that we just saw in front of us, right? And so what did Jesus do? He took the blessing with what little bit that guy gave him, that little boy, and he broke it. And when he broke it, what happened? He filled up a dozen plus baskets of bread and everybody ate. You see, people want the blessing, the other side, the millions of dollars, the beautiful house, the home, the family, everybody happy without the breaking. And that's the problem. You see, Jesus will break you so that he not to destroy you, but so that you can be duplicated, so that when you reach that promised land of whatever that looks like for you, that vision, you'll be duplicated and the blessings going to runneth over. He actually had extra, which he took across the Sea of Galilee to feed more people. And so that's what's crazy about this is when you fully submit to this process and you understand that the Lord's consistently working for you, not against you, you stop kind of resenting people who aren't in agreement with where it is that you're trying to go and what it is that you're trying to do, because your validation no longer comes from other humans, it comes from the source. And that's a big deal, you know. So finding that is hardcore emotional maturity, my friend, spiritual maturity even, because I spent the majority of my life over the last 5 years appeasing to people, you know, trying to be a people pleaser. Yeah, I'm making all these videos, doing all these contents, all this stuff. And I can tell you, man, from experience, it could be daunting if you're not prepared for it, because everybody's eyes are always on you. They're just waiting for something to mess up with you. And when that happens, you're going to see the demons in people, man.
That's the truth, man. That is the truth. I love the storytelling, brother. You got a gift for sure.
I appreciate it.
Walk through the lonely chapter. You know, you talked about you made the pivot into real estate. You know, everybody told you not to do it, especially even your mom. You know, that 18 months that you didn't close a deal. That's when everybody's demons come out, right? It's easy. Guys like you and I can write checks and the family's good and the wives are happy. When the demons come out, you doubt yourself. You're brushing your teeth. You're broke. You're doing DoorDash to pay your whatever it is, you know, donating blood and plasma. How do you go through the lonely chapter alone and not go back?
You know what's crazy? I mean, I call that BC in my life because that was before Christ.
That's good. That's good. I like
And
it.
it's funny because you know, like you're reborn again, right? And I don't mean to get biblical on your podcast, brother. I'm just
I'm good,
very
brother.
I'm very passionate about the God,
Good.
about the gospels, about God. And if I can use my platform for anything, it's to lead people closer to something that's really saved me, you know? When I think about that time frame, because this was BC, this was massive separation from those things. I was solely reliant on what other people thought of me, you know, and I think that for me, man, the main thing that I wanted so badly was just show people that this was real, you
Yeah.
know. And after a while, I got tired of it. And it was mainly choices, man. You know, I just got so fed up. I had this chip on my shoulder that I had to show somebody how great I was. I had to show them because I had so many people that were doubting me. And I think that I could speak for a lot of people that are listening to this podcast right now that might be in that same position. It ain't nothing hurts more than when the people that you've grown up with that know your potential, that have seen it, even if it's been in increments or a blink of a moment, a blimp of a moment, when you think about it, right? Like they know that it's in you, but sometimes we want them to believe that it's in us more than we believe that it's in us. And it's that outside validation that's a trap, man. I mean, I'm telling you, if you go to your wife and you know what's great in you, and you try to tell her, like, do you see that in me? She may support you, but there's also a good chance that she might not. And that's where I was. I had a partner that didn't really support what I was doing either. She said, go and get a job, Quentin. Go and get a job. You need to go and get applications, man. You're not going to be a drug dealer when we bring our kid into this world. So I was scared. I was scared. And if I look back on that time, there was a lot of depression that was fueling this, me trying to get to where it was I wanted to go. And I feel like you can describe this by three different types of individuals. And it's from a book that I love. It's called Relentless. Anybody needs to get a good book about mindset. It's a great book. It's written by a gentleman named Tim Grover. And he was the coach for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Dwayne Wade, I believe that's his name.
Yep.
But these three people, Tim Grover put his whole heart into. And he talks about three different types of people that exist in a human, especially one who's trying to achieve something great. Like most people that listen to this, they either want to get into real estate, they want to get into real estate for the best reasons. Some of you guys don't need the money. Maybe you have a sickness or something you got to take care of. Maybe
Right.
you're trying to grind it out and just build some capital so you can start owning your time and so you can leave the job that's making you miserable. Maybe you want to show out for your family that it's actually in you. I meet people in so many areas, bro, because I coach and I mentor. And this is something that I've seen in people. You get three different types of people, man. And I'd say that I'm all three. Everybody here is all three, but you're strong in one, mediocre in two, weak in three. So you're either a closer, a cleaner, or I have to remember it. It's a closer, a cleaner. Give me one moment. I can find it. A closer, cleaner, cooler. And so he describes these things as three different characteristics, right? A cooler is somebody who essentially makes it happen. They close one deal, and then you and I have seen this, Travis, in our lives, right? You never hear from them again.
Yep.
The one hit wonder. For some people, that one deal was it. And he describes this characteristic inside of a gentleman named Dennis Rodman, who would have three championships with the Chicago Bulls. And so Dennis Rodman had made it to the big time and then fell off. Didn't care about the game, didn't care about people. He just rebounded the ball. Did he ever make a lot of points? Nothing memorable. But this was a guy who made it and then just fell into complacency.
Yep.
He was really just wanting to be out in the club. I mean, they were finding him inside of clubs with the Carmen Electra, just, knocking off and not taking the game seriously. So you have that type of person. And then you have the second individual who is the closer. Now, you would think closer would be like a great thing, right? A closer is somebody who is great, but never the best, and constantly being compared to other people and living in the shadow of what once was. That he describes as Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen played a game probably as good as Michael Jordan could ever play the game, but he was never greater than Michael Jordan. And people would compare, which would steal his happiness. And so there are a lot of people that are great, but they're seeking validation from other people and living in the shadows of other people's opinions.
Mm.
So they never actually reach their full potential because what the people say around them clouds their mind and their judgment on and their potential. And so then he talks about the cleaner. The cleaner is an individual who doesn't just play the game, bro. They clean house. This isn't somebody who just plays the game. They come in and they change the way the game is played. Two, like, very, very different. Now he talks about the characteristic of a cleaner. He says a cleaner is somebody who is running from the darkness. He describes it as almost like voices in your mind that are only quieted when you are in motion and you are accomplishing things.
Mm.
These types of people have a darkness that exists inside of them that makes them want to become greater, and not just greater, but the best at whatever it is that they do. And so we're all three to some certain extent. We've probably experienced all three in our own lives here or there. But what I've come to find out is that most people that I meet that get into wholesaling or they get into real estate or any type of entrepreneurship business, a lot of them have the cleaner mentality because they're using what's dark to fuel where it is that they're trying to go. There's something that they're trying to prove to someone. There's a person that maybe have treated them badly that they don't ever want to be like, and they're running from it. And let me tell you guys right now, that's cool, but you will never get to the greatest part of you that could possibly be there. And so I remember I approached my mentor about this, right? Because I told him, like, man, I'm a cleaner. Like, I'm a cleaner all day. And so I know this sounds cool to talk about. Let me tell you all the transition that I would have that would make me hit multiple eight figures in my business, where a company, a private equity firm based out of Houston, was willing to buy me out of my company for 23, $27 million. And so this was when I hit my stride. Prior to it happening, I was going, I'd visit my mentor and I told him I'm a cleaner all day. I held it to my heart. I was so proud of it. As I'll take whatever's dark in me and I'll make it into light. You can't tell me that I'm not going to have what you have. My mentor, his name's Preston Brown. He's based out of El Paso. He's almost like a father to me. I haven't talked to him in a while. He's been very busy, but when we were very connected, we were talking every single day. It was something that I really appreciated about him, is that he'd always show me my own flaws as a mentor should, right? And so when I approached him with the cleaner mentality, he said, Q, count, if you're talking about Michael Jordan, you want to be Michael Jordan as great as him, count his rings. I said, six, six. The dude did it. And he says, all right, that's cool. Do you only want to be a six-ring champion, or do you want to be a 12 to 13 ring champion? I said, what do you mean? Because no NBA player that I know of has more than 6 to 7 rings, right? And he said, look who was his mentor. Look who was his coach. And so I Googled it because I didn't even know his name. And I looked up Phil Jackson's name, and dude has 13 championships. But why? Right? So you can want to be the greatest, or you can become the greatest by bringing out the greatness in other people. And that's what Phil Jackson did to the Chicago Bulls. That is longevity. And so when people ask me what my purpose is as far as real estate goes, if I can help end suffering for anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, I am serving my purpose on this world. If I can no longer do that anymore, then I have no reason to live, because I aspire to not just be great, but to be the reason that other people can be greater than me. And that is a crazy thing to understand. Real leaders build leaders, they don't just lead.
Real leaders build leaders, man. That's good. That's beautiful, man. Unpacked so well. Talk about the day-to-day of real estate, because it admittedly it's a buzzword, wholesaling, right? It's become sexy, it's become known. And when I sit down, I was just in with a few hundred men over the weekend in prison, explaining them the concept of wholesaling, because there's this misnomer out there, you might have heard of it. Oh, felons can't get a, fill in the blank. Felons can't get a wholesale license. Felons can't get a real estate license.
I'm a felon, bro.
I know, right? So I just giggle when I hear it, but they hear it so much from me. So I want to hear from you. What is, quote unquote, the real estate game that you're in? And walk the folks how you got into that, why you're so passionate about it. Walk them through what it is from a rudimentary perspective, not if you've ever not seen Instagram.
Yeah, man. For anybody that I truthfully think that this is important for anybody listening to this, wherever you're at, wherever you're from, this is going to apply to you. Real estate to me is not the acquisition of properties, it's the acquisition of problems. That's it. And so if you can just become a source of a solution to a problem, then you'll make money in this business regardless. And so I tell anybody that I meet, man, if you're gonna like join my program, learn from me, get mentored by me, we buy problems around here. We don't buy houses. The houses are just an association to the problem. And so the better that you get at being able to solve problems, the easier that it's going to be for you to make a lot of money here. And so with that being said, what are problems? What do these problems look like? Well, this is the thing, man. We don't talk to people who just want to sell. We talk to people who need to sell. You can find leads like this if you just go straight to your courthouse. You don't have to have some fancy software. A lot of this stuff is public information, man. I get my data from 3 different places, bro, and this is the best place we're going to find level 10 problems. You can find them from the county clerk. That's number one, where you can get liens, judgments, affidavits, list pendants, memorandums, everything that you can think of. That is a reason that someone will want to sell. I call this niche data. If you can pull it from the county, a lot of times it's free. Sometimes you just have to get a little bit creative, man. I use AI to scrape almost all of the data that I need from the county. The second piece that I get data from is the tax delinquency office. This is called the tax assessor collector, in some states called tax treasurer. All right. You can get 5 different lists inside of one list if you know what you're looking for. And so in Texas, guys, and in most states, I'd say majority of non-disclosure states, if someone's over the age of 65, they're exempt from getting their property foreclosed on for non-tax payments, meaning that they can go 3 or 5, 10, 15, 20 years until somebody turns in their death certificate, and that property can rack up a tax bill like crazy. This is actually more often than it needs to be happening, but it's very much happening now. And so why am I mentioning this is because if you pull a list of properties that are delinquent in taxes, filter that list by 2 years or more, and then look up the exemptions. Look up how many of those properties are owned by an LLC or they're put into a trust. Separate the information. Look up how many of those properties are currently in an estate or in probate. If I pull a tax delinquency list right now, man, I can promise you almost 20% of those properties that are delinquent in taxes say estate of XYZ, whoever that person is. Those are pre-probate deals that haven't even been finalized. Otherwise, they wouldn't say the estate of. It's already been transferred over to whoever owns it. And so then you'll see a tax bill of $20,000, $30,000 against one property where the individual is a senior citizen who has passed away because the property is currently in an estate. The third place to get data from, okay? This is the third spot. By the way, in tax delinquency alone, we just pulled a probate list. We just pulled a tax delinquency list. We just pulled a senior list. There's another exemption you can go after, and it's called disability. Individuals are disabled. That means health is a factor here. So then we're looking at individuals who might not be able to pay their taxes because they're going through a health deficit where health is declining. It's something to look for, even military. All right. So the third place is what we call open records requests or OPRE. It's like something like that. You see a lot of this information, people might be saying, well, how can you pull it in your county? Well, it's there for you. It's called the Freedom Information Act of America. This is a document that's been filed long before majority of you guys were even born. This document states that if it is a record that has been recorded, it could be made public minus specific information like driver's licenses and social security numbers. The third type of data you can get from open records requests. Type in open records requests into your website right now and then just pull it up and name of your county. So open records request, Tulsa County, Oklahoma, wherever it's from. And there will be a portal that you can create a free logins to that doesn't cost you a dime where you can request the data that you're looking for. Fire damage, water damage, utility shut off. You can look up holes in roofs. You can look up properties that have open code enforcement cases against them, code violations lists, right? So you can get all of this, properties that are vacant, properties that are torn down, properties scheduled to get demoed, even recent arrests you can get from open records requests. I want properties where somebody's getting arrested at a house for their third DWI. And I want to be able to pinpoint where that's happening because if somebody's on their third DWI, my God, they're looking at 5 years in prison. You know what I'm saying? In Texas, anyway, they won't play games with that. I don't know about where you guys are from, but DWI is a serious thing here in Texas. So that person probably needs money. They're gonna have to sell their property. You can get all these different data sources for free from the internet. Now, it's not about the size of the list. It's not the size of the list at all. Most people that do this business, they do it wrong. That everybody that I know of is taught to do the same strategy, Travis. I see it all the damn time from every fly-by-night guru that's out there. You download a list, they get paid to tell you that. You load the list into a dialer. They have an affiliation with the dialer that you're paying for. You start calling the leads. When you call them, you don't know what the hell to say. You're getting hung up on. You're not talking to the right people. You get burned out. And for the ones that do pull a lead, out of the 5 to 3,000 plus students that are literally in this program, guess what? You bring it back to the mentor and he splits it with you 50-50 and walks your hand without actually teaching you anything. I've seen this all too often. A lot of people get caught in the mentorship trap. All you got to do is take these records, stack them together, and then create a high probability lead where you know for a fact that if you reach out to this person, whether cold or warm, there's a situation there. If I find a property that is vacant, has multiple code enforcement violations against it for overgrown grass and holes in the roof, I see that it's absentee owned, meaning the owner lives elsewhere. The property is in an estate, so that whoever that owner is has already died, right? And the individual has $20,000 in taxes racked up for almost 5 to 10 years of non-tax payments. It's all I got to do is find that person who's
Mm.
the one going to inherit it, help them solve that problem. These types of deals will net you between 50 and $100,000 per real estate deal. I do almost 2 to 3 of these every single month, man. That's way better than doing what everybody else does, where we just throw a bunch of leads into a dialer and then pray to God that we hit somebody who wants to sell. No, man, if you're doing that, you're not doing the business right, bro. It's about getting creative. And so the day to day for anybody who's watching this, man, you should be farming leads directly from your county. You should be stacking data against each other. You should be creating high probability situations within your information, whatever leads or prospects that you're pulling that are high converting. So when you do have those conversations, they're a lot more profitable, more fulfilling because you know that you're actually helping someone. Now, the next step to all of this, bro, is curative title work. And we could jump into that like crazy, but that's a whole nother playground, my friend. And I unfortunately only have about 15 to 20 more minutes on this call. But curative title would be removing judgments, removing liens, curating title, doing
Yep.
affidavits of heirship, filing for probate against properties, putting people in positions where they can legitimately sell the property so that you can actually get an insurance policy issued to you by your title company. And so these are different types of ways that you can take on a deal. I call this the real estate cheat code, man. I've been doing this for years. It's how I learned the business, and I'm damn good at it. It wasn't any different than what I used to do before, Travis, legit.
Right.
Instead of finding stinky weed, now I'm finding stinky houses. It's the same damn thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, no difference, bro. So if you're a convict and you're listening to this, bro, just switch the product. Stop looking for green bricks. Stop looking for bricks that build houses. And let me tell you something, you're gonna make a lot more money doing this than you ever dreamed of doing anything on the outside that involves drugs. I'm just being honest.
Yeah. No, it's real talk, man. It's beautiful. I love the I love the dialogue, the breakdown of it all, and the hope, right? That's the biggest thing. Walk forward. How do you not go back to the previous life when life isn't as good as it is right now for you? How do you not go back to that? Because you have all the demons that pull you back. You have all the people that want to hold you down. Walk the folks through that. It's not going to be easy when they get out, and they're not entitled to anything.
I'll tell you, man, I just from experience, bro, and I hate to say this, dude. I'm gonna say it publicly because I gotta keep it a buck. I didn't stop selling weed until 2018, and that was barely 7 years ago, bro. I sold weed even when I was standing on stages in front of podcasts. It was hard to let go because it had been something that's all I'd ever known. And so even though this new hustle was working for me, man, I close a deal, I make 10 grand. I just thinking I could dump this into weed and they'll go make some more money rather than spending the 10 grand, put it into a bank. You know, to me, it was like that was dumb. I need to keep my money working for me. The main thing that was hard for me to break wasn't just the selling of the drugs, man. It was the people who depended on me to pay their bills on the product that I was giving them. That was the hardest part. And I got to be speaking to somebody on this, man, because that right there was one of the things that kept me in the game so long. I had a single mom. Her name was Brianna. She used to buy weed for me. She'd buy about 5 pounds at a time. She had 6 kids. She was one of my best customers, dude. And she would sell it and like the same day come back, buy five more. I felt like I was going to leave her kids high and dry on a product that she needed to make money, and so like I just remember like a big thing, right? I'd have a conversation with her one day. I told her, I was like, man, it's probably going to be one of the last deals I do with you. And she said, what are you doing now? I said, I'm getting into real estate, right? She's like, well, Q, I know you helped me out a lot, but I'm gonna be all right, man. I'm gonna be all right. I need you to go out there and follow your dreams. If this thing's calling you, then go all in and stop messing around with this stuff. And that was one of the biggest transitions in my life is when she told me that. I said, man,
Mm.
all right. I went home, bro, and I flushed my freaking I flushed like 2 pounds down the toilet. Never do that, by the way. Anybody listening to this, marijuana doesn't flush. It expands. Okay. So like I literally had to buy a plunger and then a giant hose thing to shove into the toilet because I clogged it. And I lived in an apartment, mind you. So the water was leaking into my neighbor's freaking apartment. It was a horrible idea. And I thought that it was going to be like kind of like me baptizing myself and finally changing my life around and not doing that anymore. And bro, it just kind of backfired. But to me, man, like that was the transition. Sometimes you got to put down the things that no longer serve you to walk into who God is calling you to be. And if that's one of those things that puts you in that place in the first place, like it did me, well, then, man, it's more of a reason for you to just make this transition and do something more tangible that has longevity, that ain't going to end with you either back in prison or in prison for the first time. So that's my advice to anybody that's listening on that one.
I love it, brother. With respect to your time, close it out here for the folks, for the ladies and gents. Tell them how to find you on socials because this is going everywhere. Tell them how to find you and break it down for them. What speak from your heart. It's all you, brother.
Yeah, man. I always feel like for me, when I started doing these podcasts, I had just always been like vanity. Dude, if y'all just Google me, Quentin Flores, you'll find everything that you want in regards to what I am and what I offer. Real Quentin Flores. I mean, dude, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok. I'm very easy to find. One of the things that I've always wanted to do, and if you'll allow me to do it, I'd love to pray over everybody that's here. Is that all right?
I'd love it, man. I'd love it.
Okay. If you're watching this, listening to this, wherever you're from, I kind of want everybody here to just bow their heads and break with me for a minute, all right? All right, from the heart. Father God in heaven, Heavenly Father, I lift up every soul that is tuning into this podcast, especially those who are currently incarcerated or have walked that path before. You see them, you know them, their names are written on your wall, and you have loved them beyond measure. Lord, remind them right now that their past does not disqualify them from your purpose. That if they're watching this, they're listening to this, and they truthfully believe that they can do real estate, that by your will be done, they can do real estate. You are not the God of no second chances. You are the God of second chances, of new beginnings, of redemption stories that shake the world, of transformations and transitions into people's lives where they can grow and become closer to you. I pray that every word spoken on this podcast stirs something deep in their spirit, Lord. A reminder that they are not forgotten, not forsaken, and not beyond hope. Break the chains of guilt, shame, and regret. Replace them with identity, calling, and courage. Let those that are listening to this know that they are sons and daughters, not statistics. They're leaders, not leftovers. They're warriors, not wasted potential. Fill their cells that they're sitting in, their hearts and their minds with your peace. Speak destiny over their lives, Lord. Use them to shine light in dark places, even behind bars. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, if there is a single form of self doubt, lack of certainty, any type of anxiety, any type of doubt, Lord, I pray that you rip it from every single person's mind who is tuning into this podcast and you cast it into the fire. We see you. We love you. Your will be done. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, I pray over everybody tuning in today. Amen.
Amen, brother. Appreciate that.
Absolutely, bro. Thank you for allowing me to do that. And I appreciate you having me on your podcast. You guys can follow me. It's at Real Quentin Flores on any platform. I'd love to help you guys if you're listening to this.
Continued blessings, brother, especially with the little girl on the way. We've got three. Nothing's better, bro. Nothing's better.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited. Thank you for having me, Travis.
All right, big dog. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much. God bless.
Talk soon, brother.